Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome to Steelers Almighty. This is our Scouting Report podcast, breaking down the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Baltimore Ravens. First things first, man, y'all see my jaw. I'm still on the mend, had that tooth pulled, but you know what? The show must go on. So I want to apologize ahead of time again if things don't sound right. If I start spitting at you, I apologize. But you know what? We're going to bring this thing to you anyway, man. So let's break this thing down, man, and get into this thing. The game obviously is against the Baltimore Ravens. The game is in Pittsburgh. The money line or the betting odds right now is Baltimore -3. And that probably is about right for what the teams have done and what they look like. Over under on this, though, is 48 and a half. Always got to get that half in there, Vegas. That's how they build those resorts out there. I thought that was interesting, too. I actually kind of like that one, the over on there. Weather supposed to be in the low 60s. It's supposed to be more cloudy than sunny, but you know what? Who knows? Because weather is weather, and all that can change, between now and game time anyway on Sunday. So let's break down the personnel of the Ravens. First thing first, Lamar Jackson, the quarterback, the reigning MVP, the leading candidate for the MVP this year. He is playing absolutely amazing. 2,669 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. And you could even say those 2 interceptions, those were on deflected passes off of his own receivers, just playing really, really high level football. But as always, you also got to remember Lamar Jackson can run the football. He's got 536 rushing yards as well. Lamar Jackson is just doing it this year, people. Even if you hate him, you got to give him the man his credit. He's playing outstanding football. Derrick Henry, again, just playing phenomenal football. 1,129 yards, 12 touchdowns, leads the league in both. Just I don't know if it's he slowed down last year. I just don't think the Titans were very good. He gets to the Ravens. He said, "Hey man, I still got a ton left in the tank. He's a load to handle, but I think the Steelers can handle him." But anyway, Derrick Henry playing again, outstanding football. I think you may or may not, depending on what you want out of a running back, but I would think you got to classify this guy right at the top of the list in the league. Zay Flowers, 50 catches, 688 yards, 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns. Top receiver. They've been spreading the ball around in Baltimore, but Zay Flowers is kind of taking that step to be the big receiver that the Ravens need, that they're looking for. They made some trades. Deontay Johnson, hasn't really fit in just yet. I think he may down the road, but Zay Flowers had a really good rookie year and is just basically compounding on that in his second year. As far as defensive players, you know about Roquan Smith. He's got 97 tackles already. The guy is everywhere on that defense. He's one of the best middle linebackers in the National Football League. No ifs, ands, about it. Has struggled a little bit in covering tight ends this year, but still, if he's not the best middle linebacker, he ain't third. That's what I'll say. Kyle Hamilton, outstanding strong safety, covers a lot of ground, second or third leading tackler actually on the team. Again, just makes a lot of plays. He's one of the best safeties in the National Football League. And then Namdi Mataduke, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I apologize if it's wrong. Really, really good defensive tackle. He's got 5 sacks this year. Although it's a struggling pass rush for the Ravens, he is a difference maker. You have to account for him on every single snap. As far as any free agents that they brought in, you know about Derrick Henry, and I think signing Kyle Van Noy back and bringing him back was the key for the Ravens. Top draft picks, Nate Wiggins, 30th overall. He's a starting cornerback for them. The secondary has struggled, and he has struggled as well, but he's a starter. Roger Rosengarten, offensive tackle. He was taking number 62. He's a starting right tackle. Their offensive line, it's not the best line that we've seen from the Ravens, but it's gotten a lot better. It has gotten better as the season has gone on. Are there things that the Steelers can take advantage of? Absolutely. But their line has gotten better. Look, quarterback not throwing for all those yards, running back not running for all those yards if the line's not blocking somebody. It can't just all be them. So, as far as injuries, we know Alex Highsmith is going to be out. He'll be out for a couple of weeks. Kyle Hamilton did come back to practice late in the week, so we'll see if he plays. It was limited practice. I would bet that Kyle Hamilton is going to suit up for this football game on that ankle injury. Now, as far as the matchups are concerned, look, the Steelers' strength versus the Ravens' strength. I think it's this. I think it's the Steelers' scoring defense, which is second in the league, against the Ravens' scoring offense, which is first in the league. Steelers have done a really good job of keeping people out of the end zone and stopping them from scoring points. They're only giving up 16 points a game. The Ravens, on the other hand, are getting into the end zone. They're scoring touchdowns. They're averaging 31 points a game. So a battle of wills there. As far as the Steelers' strength versus the Ravens' weakness, look, the Steelers' pass offense, if you look at it, the totality of it of the entire season, you're going to say, well, come on, Big B. They're what, 26 in the league? But the last three games with Russell Wilson, totally different offense, 230 yards a game. Pretty good. That's 12th in the league. The Ravens, on the other hand, they are dead last against the pass. Their last three games, they're giving up 313 yards. So that's an opportunity for the Steelers to exploit what the Ravens are doing. Now, weakness versus a strength, the Steelers' weakness versus a Ravens' strength. Look, it's not really a weakness for the Steelers. Their rushing offense is eighth. They're running the ball pretty well. They didn't run it for a great average last week against Commanders, but they did run for 140 yards. The Ravens, on the other hand, their rush defense is first. Now, you can say, well, teams are just throwing it on them because they can throw it all over the yard. Some of that's true. Yeah, absolutely. Some of that is true. Some of it also is that they're just good against the run. They got guys that can stop the run. So I suspect the Steelers will try to be able to establish a running game because you can't just line up and throw it every down. Even if the Ravens don't have a great pass rush, I understand that, but you can't just line up and throw it every down. You got to have to be able to run the football. So I think that's going to be a big, big matchup there. Look, we've got Kevin Oestreicher from Locked On Ravens coming in to talk to us to kind of break down the game. You know how we bring somebody in each week from the opposing team, and we've got Kevin here. He's going to talk to us a little about what the Ravens are doing, what some of their plans, how they match up with the Steelers, and what this rivalry means to the Ravens as far as a fan perspective, team perspective, player perspective, all that good stuff. So let's bring in Kevin now to discuss this. All right, we got our man Kevin Oestreicher here from Locked On Ravens joining us here on Steelers Almighty Scouting Report. First things first, Kevin, number one, thank you for coming in, my man, and we appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Ravens Steelers week always has that extra little juice to it, and it's what I love because we had to wait a little bit for this one. I know for the Steelers, they had
Right.
to wait for their first divisional game. This is their first one of the year, so now I know they got that little nice stretch of division games. But I love Ravens Steelers week.
Absolutely. That was going to be my first question, Kevin, was, how big of a rivalry is this to the Ravens, players, coaches, but more importantly, the fans?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for the fans, it definitely is still the one.
Yeah.
There have been a lot, obviously, back in the early Ravens days. They had the Titans, and that was kind of like Ray Lewis versus Eddie George and that whole
Mhm.
thing. But obviously, the Steelers rivalry is so entrenched in the history of both of these franchises. And I know for it might look like on the surface that the Ravens and Bengals, with all the comments and the games that they've had, like, oh, that's this big rivalry. But even though the Steelers and Ravens rivalry maybe has lost a little bit of rivalry shine ever since, Ben Roethlisberger, Troy Polamalu, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, those guys have kind of departed from the teams. I still think that, what it's going to be every single week where I think the teams respect each other, but they
Mhm.
don't like each other. Like
Right.
they've never liked each other. And so I like that now, you have a bunch of former Ravens who were Steelers, a bunch of former Steelers who were Ravens. And obviously we've gotten comments from both sides of that this week, which I think has honestly added some juice back to it.
Yeah, it has. I'm really looking forward to the game. Like you said, the Steelers haven't had a divisional game yet. We've got a stretch here, but the Ravens, like you mentioned, is the one. This is the rivalry. Um, moving on, which I know a lot of Steeler fans or some Steeler fans might think it's Cleveland. Cleveland definitely thinks it's us, but we really don't count Cleveland too much. Um, Look, man, Lamar Jackson, let's start there. Is this the best, Kevin, that we have seen of Lamar Jackson? Even his two MVP years, I know his first one was better than the second one, in my opinion. But is this the best that we've seen of Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, it certainly is. And I know a year ago we were kind of sitting here and saying, well, when are we going to see? Because Lamar last year was his best year. And so we were talking about,
Right.
oh, okay, well, he's been great. When is he going to ascend from this? And we've seen just a whole new level of Lamar. And it's for a bunch of different reasons. I think the decision making has improved greatly. Him not just back in the day, I guess back in the day, like last year, it was the Mark Andrews passing offense, and that was really it. Where that ball's
Right.
going to Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, or even back when Marquise Brown was on the team, they got their fair share of targets too. But all the other guys got maybe one target a game, two targets if they were lucky, maybe three. But now Lamar's spreading the ball around a lot more and utilizing all of his weapons effectively. So one game, Tylan Wallace, like last week, was the hero. Or maybe
Mhm.
Rashad Bateman gets involved. Isaiah Likely has had big games. And that, to me, a lot of people in Baltimore were talking about how for Lamar, sometimes all you have to do is take the short stuff or take what the defense gives you, and your playmakers will do the rest. And obviously, Lamar can throw the ball with the best of them, both from the pocket and when he rolls out. But I think to me, one of the things that makes Lamar in this offense so historic is the fact that he is just seeing the field, and the game has slowed down every year.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing the peak of that right now, where I think it will kind of continue on a stretch for Lamar, where he's a very low mistake player. He's not going to force anything in there. The two interceptions he's had this season have come off of receiver deflections where the ball has bounced off of their hands and into the defense. So this is the best Lamar has been in the course of his career, and on track right now to win his third MVP. I'd be pretty shocked if he didn't, unless something crazy ends up happening, especially after what we saw Jared Goff do the other night, throwing
Woo.
those 5 interceptions. So if anybody was taking Jared Goff, you might have to flip your vote over to Lamar right now. But man, it's been incredible to watch Lamar evolve over the course of his career, and we're seeing the best version of him right now.
Yeah, just watching him throw the football. From what everybody said, oh, he can't throw the football. He's a running back playing quarterback. I used to always think you're just not paying close enough attention. Um, but to see it and to put it out there this year, what he's doing is just incredible. Having said that, Derrick Henry, what he's doing at his age,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just as incredible, but it's pretty good stuff, Kevin. What's he meant coming over to the Ravens this season?
Oh, it's been huge. And, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, they were great in Baltimore. I mean, they had great years and they really played off of Lamar Jackson well. But Derrick Henry is just a different dude. Like,
Yeah.
it's honestly what you have to chalk it up to is he's massive. He has that underrated speed alongside the ability to just stiff arm you into the ground and shake you off of him. And the gravity, I use the word gravity a lot for both Lamar and Derrick Henry because back when the Ravens had J.K. and Gus Edwards, defenses, you would have to account for both guys, but you would always kind of lean Lamar's way because you understood that, like, okay, you can live with JK or Gus beating you, but
Right.
Lamar, the threat that he is. You'd
Right.
rather risk it with Lamar than go after a guy like Gus or JK. Well, with Derrick Henry, you have to pick, and there's no right answer, honestly. I mean, if Lamar hands the ball to Derrick Henry and you're going Lamar's way and you leave Derrick Henry one-on-one with a safety or a corner, it's probably not going to end well for the defense. On the other side of that, if you try to stack the box up and bring those linebackers down to try to stop Derrick Henry, well, Lamar can either take that ball, or the thing that Baltimore's done a really good job of when they use it is play action. Because the Ravens have run the ball at such a good rate this season that when those linebackers, you either stack the box with them or you just bring guys down into the box and they bite on that play fake, Lamar's done a great job of just blooping that ball over the linebackers to Mark Andrews or one-on-one situations. The Ravens have three really good separators with Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and a player I know you're very familiar with in Deontay Johnson, who's now hasn't had the biggest role over there, and he's still kind of working his way into the offense, but he is a decent separator. So
Yeah.
it's been really good for the Ravens to have those guys in one-on-one opportunities, especially when teams are selling out to stop a guy like Derrick Henry, because with Gus or JK, you could have afforded to maybe keep a guy back or make sure that, okay, yeah, we're going to sell out to stop the run, but make sure there's a guy just in case the play action happens. Well, now with Derrick Henry, you probably want that extra guy in the box, and the Ravens receivers and pass catchers are benefiting from it.
Yeah. So, I guess I mean their offense is on a kind of a pretty historic run here, Kevin. I mean, let's not kid ourselves about it. The Steelers obviously have a really good defense, so I'm real excited about that matchup. But the one area that I think the Steelers can try to take advantage of it is the Steelers' pass rush and what they can do. I'm not saying the Ravens' offensive line has been bad, but if you were going to pinpoint an area that was, I don't know, quote unquote, the weak link, it would be the Ravens offensive line. How are they going to try to neutralize the pass rush of the Steelers? Because it's something that's given them trouble in the past.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Ronnie Stanley versus TJ Watt, however many snaps those two get against each other, especially because of the fact that, Stanley has played awesome this year, and TJ Watt obviously has been one of the best in the league, really,
Right.
ever since he came into the league. So, those two, obviously, even if they're not matched up whatsoever against each other, I still think those two are going to win reps and, kind of have an impact on the game. But I am curious to see because obviously Alex Highsmith not playing in this game. That's a big loss for Pittsburgh. But I feel like they have the talent to replace him with multiple guys combined into one. I liked the Preston Smith acquisition. And obviously, you get Herbig coming back from the injury, who I think not a lot of people know outside of Pittsburgh. I think he's kind of this like underrated guy that not a lot of people really
He
know
is.
how good he is. But I think that he can replicate some of that. Obviously, you'd love to have Highsmith if you're Pittsburgh. But then even on the interior, right, you have a lot of quality options there like Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, who is one of my favorite interior guys in the league. I think he's an awesome player.
Yeah.
So going up against the Tyler Linderbaum, who in my opinion is one of the best, if not the best centers in the league. But then you have Patrick McCary, who's played pretty sound football at left guard for the Ravens. I guess if you wanted to put a weak link on that line, it would be Daniel Faalele, although he's even played better in recent weeks. So this isn't the best offensive line in the league. I'm not trying to hype it up as such because it's not true. But I do think that in the trenches, it's going to be interesting because even if the Steelers win a lot of those reps, that's step one of getting Lamar Jackson down.
Right.
Step two is actually getting Lamar on the ground. And that obviously proves to be very difficult for a lot of defenses. But obviously, when you talk about the Steelers and that defense, they've been the team that has had Lamar's number over the course of his career. That's the one defense that Lamar has not been able to figure out. And so I know a lot of people here in Baltimore certainly rooting for this to be the week that he does figure it out, but it's not
Right.
going to be an easy task.
He talked about that the other day in a press conference and just didn't really have an answer on why he was 1-3. He was like, yeah, last year we should have beat them and we didn't. The football gods. Is there any specific reason that you might be able to point to on what maybe some of the struggles have been?
Yeah, I think if I were to try to explain it, I would probably say that the Steelers have had so much talent on their defense
Yeah.
that other teams don't. And what that gives the Steelers in terms of advantage is you can have one very talented player play two or three different roles for a defense and take up two or three different things that they need to do. Whereas other defenses need to put more manpower into one specific part of a game plan. So Pittsburgh, for example, TJ Watt can do a lot of things that on other teams you would need two or three pass rushers to do because he's that good. Minka
Right.
Fitzpatrick can move all around the field. And for a lot of different teams, they don't have that luxury. So they need two or three different guys to try to fill different roles. And then all of a sudden, you're six guys down on a defense when Pittsburgh's
Right.
only down two, and you can kind of roam everybody else around and make sure you can do it. So good defenses have good players that can do multiple different things, and Pittsburgh has that. And so that's probably where I assume that the Ravens have struggled, where Lamar has struggled is it's been so easy for Lamar over the course of his career to kind
Yeah.
of exploit different defenses. But man, this Steelers team, Lamar has never, first of all, he's never played in back to back or started back to back Steelers games in a season ever. Part of that is due to, sometimes it's that week 18 game and Ravens
Right.
just don't play their guys. Injury is another factor of that. But yeah, last year, Lamar had, I think, the best 100 or sub 200 passing yard game I've ever seen because his receivers dropped like 5 touchdowns and 7 passes.
Whew.
So, but it's a win is a win and a loss is a loss. So they have to execute on all cylinders. And Lamar, I'm sure he thinks about it. I know he downplays it and says, "Oh, this is a Steelers week, but it's just another week." I'm sure he's thinking about it and he wants to kind of right that ship here for himself.
Yeah, absolutely. So flipping to the other side of the ball, the Ravens, it's just kind of been a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. As good as they've been against the run, they've been equally as bad against the pass. I would guess that maybe the pass rush is part of the reason why. But I'll let you tell it. What's going on with the Ravens and that pass defense?
Yeah, it's brutal this year. It's for a lot of different reasons. You mentioned the pass rush, and that's certainly been one of them. Their stats aren't necessarily terrible, but the eye test will tell you different,
Right.
especially when you have guys like Jameis Winston and Bo Nix sitting back there with 4, 5, 6 seconds to throw, and obviously, I thought the pass rush looked a lot better against Joe Burrow. I mean, and if it's not against that Bengals offensive line, I don't know when it was coming for this pass rush, because that line, they were down Orlando Brown and they're already bad with Orlando Brown in there. So it was good to see Nnamdi Madubuike get 3 sacks and a lot of other guys have moments. But when you can't get pressure on the quarterback, as you kind of talked about, your secondary can't cover for that long. And
Right.
kind of on the other side of that, if you flip back to Baltimore's offense for just a second, something that Lamar Jackson's done very well is when he floats out of that pocket, he'll just be chilling back there for 5 seconds. And he started to draw pass interference penalties on opposing defenses because guys just can't cover for that long. Well, for the Ravens defense, it's the exact same thing where look, Marlon Humphreys had a great year.
Hmm.
And Kyle Hamilton, he practiced on Thursday, but he's had a great year too. Darius Washington has had moments, but you've seen regression from Brandon Stevens. You've seen regression from Marcus Williams, and it goes hand in hand. John Harbaugh talked about how the pass rush and the secondary, they have to be playing as one. You can't
Right.
have them off. You can't have them on different pages because covered sacks are real. When your secondary covers, your pass rush gets home. And then also, when your pass rush gets to the quarterback, your secondary doesn't have to cover for as long, and it helps that out too. So part of it's also been the fact that in some of these games, Baltimore's just been up by a lot, and teams have had to throw the ball more than they just have to abandon the run. But it goes much deeper than that. I mean, this pass defense is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the league, and part of it's because they can't cover tight ends, and Roquan Smith has regressed in that regard, and it's tough because they have all the. It's not a talent issue. It really hasn't ever been a talent issue with them this
Right.
season. But the execution hasn't been there. There have been miscommunications. Zach Gore's their first year defensive coordinator, has never called plays before, and he's had some questionable moments. So you kind of throw all that together, and it makes one big mess in that Ravens secondary and that pass defense.
Gotcha. So, obviously, this is a big time matchup, in my opinion, and probably, I don't know about yours, but in most people's opinion, watching football, I know there's the Chiefs and Bills going on, but this is kind of the marquee matchup of the week. I mean, just two juggernauts just bashing each other like they always do. Really enjoyed, or am going to enjoy watching this football game. What are the keys for the Ravens to win in Pittsburgh on Sunday?
Yeah, I think first of all, don't allow any big deep shot plays to the Steelers' offense, and that obviously goes hand in hand with the secondary, where Russell Wilson obviously looking revitalized over there in Pittsburgh. They go and get a guy, Mike Williams, who loves those deep jump balls, and
Yeah.
obviously George Pickens can do everything out on that football field when he's on. So I think for the Ravens, just don't let Russell Wilson get comfortable and make him, even if it is the Ravens, they have their mantra on defense, which essentially is bend, don't break, where they'll give you stuff over the middle of the field and they'll let you kind of walk down to their own 40. We get inside that Baltimore 40, Baltimore 30, and then they just kind of tighten up and you get maybe a field goal or a punt. But if you allow those deep shot plays, it's not going to go well for you because obviously that either results in a touchdown if a guy gets behind you,
Right.
or you're picking up all that chunk in 1 or 2 plays, and then you have to tighten up a lot quicker than that. So don't allow any deep shot balls to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Second of all, on the offensive side of the ball, I do think establishing the run game, which Baltimore's done a decently good job at this season. They're pretty good at running the ball. So doing that to make sure that Pittsburgh has to stay on their toes defensively. Because if Pittsburgh is able to stop the ground game, it's always going to be a threat. But Pittsburgh maybe won't devote as many resources, which, as we talked about earlier, takes away from your play action game. And that can hurt if you're not running the ball effectively and you run a play fake with a handoff, defense is going to look at you like, okay, yeah, right. You
Right.
are really going to run the ball here. And kind of hand in hand with that is Baltimore can come back. There was that narrative about Lamar can't ever come back. And, if you get up against that was never true in the first place, but you don't want to be down. And I think part of that is for the Steelers, you don't want to get them in a rhythm. And for Baltimore, you don't want to have to abandon your ground game, which is kind of what we saw against the Bengals when, honestly, both games where the Ravens weren't able to, they were down by 14 in the game on Thursday night. They were down by 10 in the fourth quarter of that week 5 game. And it made life easier for Cincinnati's defense because they weren't as worried about Derrick Henry. When this Ravens team is on, teams have to worry about both Lamar and Derrick Henry. So I'd say don't move away from that. And part of that is just don't get down.
Right. No, totally understand. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to the football game. I think the Steelers are going to try to not be so vanilla on the defensive side. They've been pretty vanilla this season. Not a lot of blitzing, a lot of zone coverage, and I think you're going to have to mix it up to be able to beat Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. And I don't know if you're going to confuse a guy that's good, but you at least have to try because quarterbacks are too good. Lamar Jackson in general too good to just sit back in his zone. He's just going to pick you apart. So I think the Steelers are going to try to mix it up there. Last one, I put you on the spot, Kevin. Who wins on Sunday?
Oh, you know, I'm gonna go with the Ravens, but I think it's gonna be a close one. These games are always so weird, where the final score will be like 12-9 or 17-14. Now, I would expect maybe a little more fireworks in this game, just because I think both offenses are playing really well, and for the Ravens defense in particular, obviously that secondary has done no favors in trying to get my belief in them right now. I don't believe in them one bit, so I'm going to say that the Ravens win it, but I'm going to go more so like 27-24. I think it'll come down to that. And honestly, and we've seen this plenty of times, maybe it comes down to Justin Tucker versus Chris Boswell, and that will be who ends up winning the game. Whoever has the ball last and is able to
Right.
work their way down the field. Tucker has had his fair share of struggles this year. I know Boswell's had a pretty good year himself, but
Right.
it could just be, hey, whoever has the ball last and is able to work the ball down the field in the field goal range gets the win.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be fairly high scoring myself, but we'll see. I'm just really looking forward to this, man. Cannot wait for the Steelers and Ravens. Again, thank you, Kevin, for taking the time to join us, man. Let everybody know exactly where they can find you and everywhere that you're at.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. It was really fun hopping on here with you. You can find me over on the Locked On Ravens podcast. So we do Ravens content over there 5 days a week plus more. We're gonna go live after the game is over between the Ravens and Steelers. Win, lose, hopefully not ties. Ties just mess everything up, and
Yeah.
I don't like ties, so
No.
hopefully no ties. But regardless, if you want the Ravens perspective on kind of what the outlook was on the outcome of the game, be sure to come over to Locked On Ravens and tune in for that. You can also find me over on social media at ChaosStriker34. I do written work over at the Ravens Wire for USA Today. I do some stuff for Bleacher Report and also at the Ryan Ripken Show, talking to low Ravens and Orioles baseball over there as well.
All right, man. I appreciate you giving us your time again. Hey, any Ravens fans, if the algorithm somehow has you over here, make sure you go to Locked On Ravens and go subscribe over there. Kevin does an outstanding job. So we appreciate you, Kevin. Thank you for giving us your time today.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks so much.
All righty. Now, look, the outcome of this, let's break this down, man, as far as what I believe is going to happen. Look, the location obviously is in Pittsburgh. The coaching, I think the coaching is even. Now, I'm sure I'm going to get some back and forth on both sides of this, but I really believe that this is an even matchup when it comes to coaching. I personally think both guys are good coaches. I know you're going to find fans on both sides that don't like the head coach, but you know what? Their head coach can come up to them, give them $1,000,000, and you would complain that he gave it to you in cash and didn't put it directly into your bank account. So what are you going to do? You can't satisfy everybody. But I think it's a really good coaching matchup, and I think they're good coaches, outstanding coaches, to be quite frank with you. But I think the matchup is even. Now, as far as the history, look, the Steelers own the history 35-25, but more importantly, Steelers have won 7 of the last 8 matchups. Now, I get it. Some of those games, the Ravens weren't playing their guys because they had already, wrapped up the division, so they didn't play at the end of the year. But some of those games they weren't. The Steelers just won, so deal with it. I don't want to hear all the excuses, yada yada yada. 8 football games, you won 1. That's all I need to know. So don't talk to me about what happened here, who didn't play, yada yada. Lamar Jackson is 1-3 as a starter against the Steelers. That's a real fact. So he didn't sit out all these games. He's 1-3. So it is what it is, man. As far as the matchups or the roster, the roster is concerned, yeah, if you go man for man, I think the Ravens have a better roster than the Steelers, especially at the top end. You know, I think they have an overall better roster. Doesn't necessarily mean they have a better team, but it means they have a better roster. As far as the matchups are concerned, yeah, I think if each individual matchup, if you break all of that down, I think the Ravens have a slight advantage. I think they do. You know, when the Ravens run the football, although the Steelers are really good against it and we're going to have to be outstanding on Sunday, I still think the Ravens may have that advantage. That doesn't mean it's going to work out that way. That doesn't even mean I'm going to predict it to work that way. But if you just look at it, I think the Ravens slightly, just slightly, have a little bit of an advantage over the Steelers when you break down these matchups, man. And then as far as the outcome is concerned, I went back and forth. I went back and forth and I thought, it could be this, could be that. And then I said, B, just go with your gut and what you thought immediately. And that's what I'm doing. I got the Steelers winning this one 33-27. I think there's going to be some points scored. I think the offenses are better than the defenses on either side. That's what I believe. That's why I have the high score. I know a lot of times these are slugfest, and they have been slugfest. But the Steelers couldn't score points last year and they were able to mop out a win in that first matchup when it was strength versus strength. But Steelers can score some points this year. The Ravens' defense last year was really good. The Ravens' defense is not any good this year. I don't care what you say talking about a run or against the run. Teams are throwing the football all over them. And I believe the Steelers are going to have enough. 33 points seems like a lot, but their defense is terrible. Period. End of story. Give me the Steelers 33-27. And that's basically what it is, man. Look, this rivalry is hard nosed, hard fought. It means something. You know, you don't have a whole lot of real rivalries anymore in the National Football League. Free agency, guys moving around, guys played with each other before, but this one's it's a real thing. And this is the Steelers' rival. Look, I get it. Cleveland is there, it's closer. The Browns are not the Steelers' rival. Now, we are their rival, but the Browns are not the Steelers' rival. I mean, we don't strive to be them. The Browns strive to be the Steelers. And the Ravens, I'm not saying they're an equal franchise or anything like that, but we'd be lying to ourselves if we didn't say they've had more success over the last decade than the Steelers. Of course they have. But that doesn't mean that we're not right there with them. Look, the Steelers and the Ravens, it's going to be a hard fought game. It's going to be a physical game. A lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of pushing, a lot of shoving, a lot of cussing, all the things that we like. And then when we come out of this, and we don't have to respect them either. So, people say, well, you don't have to like them, but you should respect them. Why? Why do I have to respect them? I don't like my rival. I don't want anything good to happen to my rival. I don't want them to play good. I don't want any of that. I don't want them to win any games. That's the way I look at a rival. Now, some people you may look at it differently. But Big B, I say F the rival. I don't want nothing that you do to be any good. So that's how I feel about the Ravens. Sorry, it's just the way it is, people. That's what a real rivalry is. You don't root for anything good with your rival, and I'm not going to start now. Period. End of story. Want to thank everybody, man, for coming out and joining us today. Again, I appreciate you all being in here. I'm on the IR, but I'm trying to get it in. I'm still trying to get it in, people. Hopefully next week, this swelling will go down so I can start talking to you guys like a normal person. But I was not going to make these videos and bring you guys this content just because I had a tooth pulled. Just wasn't going to happen. Too big a week. Too big a week. So I appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Remember, hour before the game, be right here. Steelers Almighty. We're going to go live and get ready for the game. 15 minutes after the game, we're going to be right here. Steelers Almighty. Talking about exactly what happened and all the good stuff within the game. I appreciate everybody being in here. I love you guys, man, and aloha.